We just spoke with Jeff Jefferson, co-founder and CEO of Employdrive, about his almost lifelong career in the staffing industry and how Employdrive can help with your payroll, benefits, and ACA compliance.
You're listening to the Purple Squirrel podcast, where you'll learn how to make the unattainable attainable through the insights of staffing technology experts.
We're your hosts, Sarah Haberman
and Hannah DeBoule. Jeff, how are you? We're very happy to have you.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Looking forward to chatting a little bit more about Employdrive and your background. But I guess before we start talking about Employdrive, everyone is dying to know, is your real name Jeff Jefferson?
No. So as I like to tell people, no, my mom did not name me Jeff Jefferson. So
that was Jay Cutler tipped us off on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
I just thought we were kind of being jerks.
No, that was Jay. That was Jay.
I was gonna say Jay's one to talk about names, right?
Yeah, that's Jay Cutler.
Yeah, the Jay Cutler. Yeah, no, I was actually. It's a cool story. I was actually in the military, and I'm about 6'7", and so in the military they tend to shorten your last name, and that's what you go by. So like my roommate was Joe Christoph. He went by Chris. I was Big Jeff, so I got the nickname of Jeff from Uncle Sam.
Cool. I actually didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. What's your actual first name?
My actual first name is Charles.
Oh. Charles.
Yep. Chuck.
I like Jeff Jefferson.
Yeah, I think it rings. Exactly.
Good story.
It's memorable. That's what Jay, who for our listeners is one of the managers on the alliances team, like Hannah, he says that his actual name is Joseph. But he goes by Jay because it's more memorable.
Yep. There you go.
Well, he goes by Jay because he goes by Jay, and he's kept going by Jay because it's more memorable.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so you've been involved in some way, shape, or form in the staffing industry since 1998, I believe. But tell us a little bit about your life before staffing.
Obviously, you heard about the military stuff. So I came from a really, really small town in a really, really small state called Bridgeville, Delaware. And I went to school for a couple of years to play basketball, being 6'7". Then I ended up completely quit school, joined the military, and ended up jumping out of airplanes for a living, and then playing basketball in the military full time. And
that's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing. So a lot of the military bases have like they call it post teams, and so that's part of your gig is to play on those post teams. And I ended up on the All Army basketball team. Back in 95, and then I just kind of lucked out that it happened to be at the time it was. I ended up getting a full scholarship to the University of Richmond to play basketball, and the military let me out early. So I went to Richmond, played for 2 years, and then went to Europe to try to be a professional basketball player, and completely demolished my knee. So I came back to the States and got a job working at Apex Systems.
Logical transition.
Yeah.
Go from playing hoops to sitting in a chair making 100 phone calls a day.
Well, I think you said it was playing hoops, jumping out of airplanes, then playing hoops again.
Yes.
And then making a million phone calls.
Exactly.
Quite the journey. Is there some sort of edict that if you're over 6'7", you have to play basketball?
No, but it's certainly helpful.
It helps.
Yes, there's a number of areas it helps, and in other areas it really sucks. But
yeah. So you've had quite the journey on your way to Employdrive. Can you kind of give us your elevator pitch on who Employdrive is, what they do, and why staffing customers care?
Yeah, so the elevator pitch is we're a staffing-specific alternative to ADP, Paychex, and the typical payroll players. I think part of some of this will be answered in some of the other questions that you guys will ask, I'm sure. But I think part of the issue and the reason that staffing companies care about that is, as you guys see, Bullhorn sees it, and a lot of other ETS vendors see it. If you don't have some experience in the niche and in the space, you tend to lack credibility in some cases. So, especially something as kind of mission critical as payroll. We saw the same thing, back in the day with the old TimeSheezy software, now Bullhorn Back Office. If you haven't lived the pain, you come into the relationship at a severe disadvantage, right? And so I think clients really kind of take to the fact that we've been in their shoes. We've done invoicing, we've done payroll, we've done, time card collection, we've done placements. So, we've lived their pain. So when we, are going into a sales or an implementation or a support engagement with a customer, we can actually talk about it like we know what we're talking about, right? Versus ADP and Paychex and all the traditional vendors out there, they're just selling, right? They have no idea, what they're talking about, especially when you get into the weeds. So the elevator pitch is we're very specific in staffing. We do payroll, ACA, benefits administration. And the reason that staffing companies like that is because we actually know their business. So.
Right. Yeah. I think there's some sort of parallel there between the fact that, like here at Bullhorn, we sell an ATS and CRM, and we use that internally. Yep. So there's kind of like there's a little bit more truth to the words, I think, of our sales team that, hey, we actually use this and it's what powers our business. Yep. So you can trust in that fact. So I think I get what you're saying there. Can you tell us why a staffing firm might outsource payroll? Are there scenarios where outsourcing might not necessarily make sense?
Yeah. So I think the statistics, like 45% of all U.S. companies outsource payroll or tax or both in their business. And I would say when you look at an individual kind of niche or more of a broad niche within staffing, you probably have much higher or lower numbers on that. And we really kind of break our customers down into sort of three different areas. So we've got, our professional staffing, so it's like IT and, accounting and finance, engineering, legal, office work, that sort of stuff. I think you find a much higher percentage of those organizations outsource payroll. And I think a big kind of reason for that, they operate at higher margins, obviously. Their time, I think a lot of them kind of value their time a little more because they have really high-end requirements, and they've got it's a lot less volume. So it's more important for them to spend that time on the recruiting side of the business and the revenue generation side of the business, right? They're also more spread out geographically. So if you're in more than a couple of states, keeping up with compliance and changes in tax law and changes in paid sick leave laws, that sort of stuff. It's a lot to keep up with. And of course, ACA compliance, right? Because they're offering benefits. They have to manage, benefit plans, and they have to report that to the feds and to the employees. So the second niche, and for us, that's about 67% of our business. We do about 22% of our business is commercial and light industrial staffing. And I think the second part of your question is, are there scenarios where outsourcing may not make sense? Traditionally, that's an area that kind of reluctantly outsources payroll, or they look at outsourcing payroll and then they don't do it, right? Lower margins, more geographically focused, so it's easier for them to kind of run a payroll operation because they're in one state or maybe two states. And historically, I think they don't like the model within ADP or Paychex because of the fact that they run multiple payrolls, right? When you run your own payroll, you can do payroll whenever you want. Right? ADP, Paychex, they operate a little differently from a cost structure as well as a support structure perspective. Those sort of operations need high availability, right? You gotta run a quick special payroll on a Thursday to get everybody paid on Friday. You can't wait on hold for half an hour with ADP, right? And then have to explain over a period of time what you do for a living, to get ADP to actually set up your special pay run, right? On top of the fact that they don't allow overnight ACH. So there's a bunch of reasons on that side. We actually overcome that a lot. The reason we've been able to work with commercial staffing is because there's no such thing as a late payroll, and you can run as many payrolls as you want. It doesn't impact your cost. And our team, our support structure is there so that you're not on hold for half an hour, to get someone to set up that special payroll. Then the last section of our business is healthcare. Traditionally, they don't operate with or don't outsource payroll. A lot of the like travel nursing and healthcare clients we work with, they do daily pay, which does not in any way, shape, or form kind of mesh with the traditional payroll world. So we actually enable clients to do daily payroll on the healthcare side. That's a niche we really want to focus more and more on moving forward. But in general, they wouldn't outsource that part of their business because the other services just don't support it. Right?
Yeah. So what are some of the other, you mentioned that light industrial staffing was a little bit more like hesitant to outsource their payroll,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm sort of pivoting away from like that type of thing. What are some of the differences between different industries, like I guess from a cultural perspective, that might make them a little bit more hesitant to outsource something or use a new technology that you've maybe experienced? And I'm asking because I spoke with a light industrial customer of ours earlier today, and they were talking a lot about payroll, and they were a little bit hesitant to adopt new technologies. And I'm wondering if you can kind of speak to like maybe the why behind that, just in your experience.
Yeah, I think in our sample size on the light industrial side and commercial side is fairly small. So, probably more anecdotally than, statistically across the board. But, what we find is the kind of the adoption or the kind of reluctance to adopt technology. It tends to sometimes, and again, we're a small sample size. It tends to be driven by the fact that there's some person in the business who's just been doing this for so long, and they're so reluctant to take that piece of work away from, that specific human being. Again, at least across our clients, we've seen that, and customers that have decided to outsource. We've had multiple clients. Part of the reason that they did is because that person retired. No joke, right? And so you've got, I just kind of used the name, Mildred has been doing your payroll for 30 years. Well, what are we going to do with Mildred if we outsource payroll, right? That's all Mildred has ever done, So there's certainly some of that. And again, I think it's the market has just made it difficult for them to do that, right? So I think, culturally it's ingrained that that you just do it yourself. It's what you do for a living, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, totally.
Mildredson.
Mildred.
Mildred.
So how do you go into engagements like that, and what are some of the things that you show them or some of the stories that you share with them to kind of demonstrate that like this is an underserved area of your business, or this is a way that your business could improve if you adopt new technology or if you outsource your payroll? Yeah,
and I think from a sales perspective, it's in a lot of cases it's the same as what we were doing, back with the time and expense software. It's when you're replacing a more manual, in-house process, you're going in and saying, hey, look, here's how you can, create some efficiency in the business. Take the time that you're spending doing this on, other more, whether it's revenue generation or report generation, type activities. So basically take that person's, time and kind of retask them, right? As any person selling any software or service is always trying to do, because when you replace Mildred, who might be like the owner's sister-in-law or something, right? Mildred's not very happy with you, but then for us, speaking very specifically about how we go into these engagements, it's like, look, we're not trying to replace your team or trying to, trying to get anybody fired, right? We want to work with your team, and we basically like embed as almost a component of that organization, right? From a support perspective, as day to day, we're really, kind of more concierge level from a support side. So we're not looking to replace, we're actually looking to augment your team, and then get these really kind of high risk operations out of your hair, right? If you guys mess up tax payment, that's on you. If we mess it up, it's on us, right? And so, especially some of the LI, so like our customers that are commercial, they are across, multiple jurisdictions, or they're in Ohio or Pennsylvania, and you're dealing with local tax and that sort of thing. Take that complicated part of the business, off of your kind of risk platform, right?
So are you finding, I feel like we hear the phrase like robots are coming for your jobs or our jobs constantly, especially working in the technology industry. Do you have to kind of fight? It sounds like you do have to sort of fight against that language or that rhetoric as you're trying to sell your product and convince people that it is a worthwhile spend, and that it's augmenting, like you said, people's jobs as opposed to replacing them. Like how do you fight against that? Do you find that you have a lot of people pushing back with that kind of language?
Not for what we do. That's when I'm at Engage or Staffing Tech, or one of the trade shows, and they're talking about AI and blockchain and all this really fancy stuff. We're kind of and again, I might be blinders on, but as we look across the landscape of what we do, the reality is there are so many nuances from one state to the next, from one town to the next, from one city to the next when it comes to tax, when it comes to, all of these, all these regulations and compliance, related issues. From our perspective as a payroll and ACA compliance vendor, we're not really super worried about automation because whoever cracks that nut is, the next Google, right? Because there's so many moving parts, 50 states, just think about Pennsylvania has 2,800 different tax, jurisdictions, right? Ohio, wow. Every single city has its own, tax. You got school-based taxes. Dealing with that in a really super automated way is not really super feasible, right? So from our perspective and competing with ADP and Paychex and those guys, there's certainly some lights out sort of, activities that could be automated, but at the end of the day, humans have to be involved because there's so many decisions to be made, especially then not just payroll, you're talking about benefits and you're talking about ACA, you're talking about workers' comp. Yeah. These sort of things are so complex and just there's no uniformity, right? So there's no way to build something to automate that. You have to have humans making decisions every minute of every day, right?
Totally. Yeah. What are some of the trends that you're seeing then in the benefit space and even just around like growing employee loyalty and retention and employer brand?
I think just in general, obviously from our side, just the fact that more clients and more companies are actually putting in place, whether it's just a simple MEC plan, like with an essential staff care, or American Worker, or, one of those sort of products. Yep. And, not to get too deep in the weeds on that stuff, but they're being more cognizant of these, that, hey, we have to offer something, right? And then, then obviously clients are even more, are offering, full major medical, like real, healthcare plans. So I think back, and I don't know what the exact percentages are these days of clients, across the board with us, it's probably 75% of our clients offer benefits. So that's a much higher number than the statistics I had heard years ago when I owned my staffing company. It was like a quarter of, staffing companies offered healthcare. So I think just in general, the fact that clients are now actually putting those plans in place, our clients, and doing it obviously in a compliant way. We do a lot of work with our clients, not necessarily to force that compliance, but to help them with it. But and then of course just the ability for employees to kind of manage their own experience. That's talking about like self-service and instead of having to pick up the phone to call in and change your tax withholdings or to update your direct deposit account, right? It's giving the employee the ability to do that stuff. So obviously that's a big part of it. And then of course the brand. So, like things that Bullhorn's doing for, custom pages, landing pages, jobs, applications, all that sort of stuff. It's trying to get that stuff into as much as possible, kind of a single platform, right? So I see a lot of clients, kind of trending towards that. Yep. It's obviously, and then I think the big thing, because you got really kind of two as in staffing, right? You got two sides of the house, right? The temp, organization, right? You obviously want to retain those folks for your clients, but then you've got your internal staff. And I think the biggest trends there are certainly around, certainly around developing, employees, making sure that they feel like, they're getting career progression, right? So there's a path for them to thrive in the organization. There's, leadership that's actually giving them knowledge and allowing them to collaborate and work across different, parts of the organization, that sort of stuff. So those are some of the big things that we see. So, and we've got our finger on the pulse, and there's certainly some ideas around how to, kind of enhance that for our customers. It's a tough nut to crack though, for sure.
And I also think I just want to add to the bit about people looking for a little bit more training and reskilling and all of that, all of those buzzwords. I feel like that type of thing also helps helps our mutual customers to sort of further develop their relationships with their clients because they're sort of raising the bar for the type of experience that they're delivering to their clients because they're further developing their internal staff and even in some cases their contractors. So it's good. So it's all connected.
Yeah, it's funny, like thinking about at Engage last year, right? When Art was doing the keynote and talking about how some of the some Bullhorn clients are actually creating either a relationship with a trade school or actually creating their own and instead of going out and recruiting for talent in this one specific skill set, they're creating the talent, right? So I think that you'll see that more and more is my guess.
Yeah. So I actually want to rewind a little bit. Can you tell us about your journey as a founder and what that, if there was one, what that lightning bolt moment was for starting Employdrive?
Yeah. So after, of course, the failed attempt at pro basketball, working with Apex, which is obviously one of Bullhorn's large customers. So I was the 20th employee hired at Apex.
Oh, wow.
There were 2 offices. And so I got the opportunity, pretty early in my career. I actually opened and ran the Dallas, Texas office for Apex. So I got kind of the entrepreneurial bug by basically, and think about this. I can't remember how old, 27, 26, whatever. I was a little bit of an older grad because of my military, experience in there. I'm sitting on a milk crate in the middle of a completely empty office that hasn't been renovated yet in Las Colinas, Texas, with a book of lists and a telephone. And that's how I started the Dallas office, right? And so,
oh my gosh,
that's so funny. I love to hear these old stories. Like I can't even imagine doing that.
Especially such established companies now. Like,
right.
Humble beginnings always.
Yeah. So, it was about a week for them to get the furniture and all that stuff. So, having that experience of like, I'm starting at ground zero and I'm building something. So, little pat on my own back, right? We were the 11th office open. And when I left Apex, it was the 4th largest office, right? So, from sitting on a milk crate to, being one of our most successful offices was a pretty cool experience. So what I learned there was how to treat people, right? I learned what it takes to develop, and that was a big part of Apex's success. I think one is being very stringent with how they hire and staying true to sort of the profile and the types of people that they wanted to bring into the culture, and then developing the heck out of those people, right? So when I was in Dallas, that's when they started the training program, and we were just getting tons and tons of really great development, both how on the recruiting side, on the sales side, how to treat people from a customer perspective. I mean, those guys were awesome. So my journey as a founder is seeing how it's done correctly, right, and living through that and taking a lot out of that. I then left Apex and I joined an existing executive search firm and started an IT staffing division with an executive search firm. That shall remain unnamed. But that was a miserable experience, taught me how not to treat people and how not to operate a business. So I took those 2 lessons, and that's when we actually started what was then called TimeSheezy. So that was the time and expense product that we sold to Bullhorn in 2013. We knew how not to do it. We had seen how to do it. So the goal was to actually pull those things together, learn from those lessons. And then I realized once I had done, the TimeSheezy thing, I was pretty much unemployable. Because I kind of feel like I've got good ideas about stuff and I want to be in charge. So once we sold and I came to work at Bullhorn, Art probably knew that I was going to leave, pretty soon after that. We knew we were going to start Employdrive pretty much immediately. So the goal was to, like I said, kind of pick up where Employdrive, left off. So where TimeSheezy left off, right?
Yeah. So it seems like from what I've read about Employdrive that customer experience is really, really important and an important part of the business and something that you really emphasize. And it's something that you've echoed just now. How do you think that your singular focus on the staffing industry helps you provide a differentiated customer experience or an elevated one?
Yeah, so I think like we were talking about earlier, right, is the shared experience, with our customers, the fact that and I always pick on muffler shops. I don't know why muffler shops stick in my head, but when we're on a support call, with a client, the next phone call is going to be a staffing company. The phone call prior was a staffing company, right? And so there's so many nuances in the staffing business, especially when it comes to time and pay and billing and all that stuff, right? And so the fact that we know that niche so well, all my support reps have some exposure, to staffing before we hired them. So I think there's that shared experience. There's an empathy there, that we know what it's like to, be sitting there on a Thursday waiting on time cards, right? That's a thing we've done, right? So I think at the end of the day, our clients kind of respect that. We've also got some pretty specific metrics around how we deliver support as well, which I think is another big differentiator. Is our metrics are vastly different than an ADP or Paychex. We could just operate at a much higher touch level. our average customer is about anywhere between 350 to 400 employees, depending on the week, right? ADP's average customer is 20 employees, right? So they have anywhere between 100 to 150 clients per support rep. We average about 15 clients per support rep. So just availability. So I always say that the two of those things combined, the fact that you can get in touch with us and we know what the heck you do for a living, I mean, without question, that would probably be the number one thing across the bulk of our clients. That's our biggest differentiator and kind of competitive advantage.
Mm-hmm. And I think for something or for a business like Employdrive or even like a background checking company or something that's completely necessary to the operation of your business, you want to be able to get in touch with support when you need it, because it's so like essential to your bottom line at the end of the day. Like it's, I feel like I've also talked to a lot of people about background screening companies, because that's one of the categories that I manage in the marketplace. And I feel like one of the biggest drivers of churn off of a certain provider, if they have the choice, is because the support isn't great, or they're not able to get in touch with someone as soon as they need it. So yeah, that's definitely a big one.
I would say support is like one of the only areas of a business. Like people always say when things are going well, people don't notice. You only hear complaints that they're going poorly. I feel like support is the one area, at least in my experience, where if you have phenomenal support, customers do call that out. And they're this went seamlessly. You were always responsive, so helpful. I wouldn't be able to run my business without like your support. I think it's like the one exception.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
Well, it's funny because that I joke, and I say ADP is our best sales rep, right? Because it's because of that, right? It's just the availability and knowledge, I think, are the two big things.
Yeah, it makes people trust you, makes them feel sort of like an affinity to your brand.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Because what we do is such a I think just traditionally it's such a commodity, right? It's like it's like the power company, right? And for a lot of clients, it's kind of the same sort of mentality, right? I got one, like here, we've got Dominion Power, right? With payroll, it's like, okay, I got paychecks or ADP. They're interchangeable, right? I don't have a whole lot of choice. So I do it and I bear it, right? Where we really kind of, the goal is to really make it more of a value add, right? It's not just a commodity that you're paying for because you have to have it. It's how do we make the business more efficient, right? How do we get people paid more quickly, more accurately, that sort of thing. We hope that our legacy is kind of more along that lines, not just a commodity, just checking a box, but actually helping these clients grow. And oh, by the way, when our clients grow, so do we. It's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
We've got skin in the game,
Totally.
Yeah. Are there any sort of, I guess, new pain points that you've seen in the industry that might make you want to start another company? Do you ever think about founding a second or third company, I should say?
Well, and we assume it would be in staffing.
Yeah.
Well, that's a loaded question. There's still.
I would hope.
Yeah. No, there's.
Yeah, we can't ask that.
ATS. No. Never.
No.
No. I think at the end of the day, I think for us, certainly we see a lot of need for ancillary products, whether it's to what we do or then you got stories like Herefish. Those guys found a very specific pain point idea. They went out and got after it, and look how that went. Same thing when we did Timesheezy. We lived that problem. We tried to solve that problem, and it worked out really well. So I'm sure at some point there'll be something else, but I'll give the Bill Belichick answer. It's like we're focused on this business. We're so laser focused on making our internal operation as efficient as it can possibly be with the systems we use internally, given our team development around how they support our customers. But I wake up every day trying to think of ways to make what we do now just better, right? And then of course on the same side, going out and just getting more customers, right? And so that's obviously the big focus. So I'm sure at some point we'll do something again, but this is our baby. We're trying to grow this thing. So.
Yep, love it. You lived the problem, you found the solution, and now you're just trying to make the most of it.
That's it.
Love that.
All right. Well, So Hannah's giving me the eyes because we have some trivia for you.
Oh
at
boy.
the end of this at the end of this podcast, but we're playing to our audience and we made it basketball related because we did our research. So
We could have done staffing, but
we do normally do staffing, which is more relevant, but a little less fun.
Mm-hmm.
So are you ready for your first question?
I'm ready.
All right. Which 3 positions did Michael Jordan play, not just in basketball? A, shooting guard, B, small forward, C, outfielder.
Well, all of the above.
Yep.
That's true.
Ding, 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 ding.
Did we
ding.
phrase that one wrong?
No, with
You just
which
didn't.
3
You just
did
didn't give me
play?
the D.
Not
Yeah,
just
you
in
didn't give me the fourth.
basketball.
The fourth answer.
Because 2 of those are, one is baseball. I actually didn't. I didn't know that about
Yeah, he played for the Birmingham Barons.
Outfielder. Cool.
The Barons?
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that was a
With the
Birmingham.
name.
All right, you can do the second one.
Question number 2. Which of the following players has the most points in a career? Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaq, or Yao Ming?
Kareem.
Ding,
Correct.
ding, 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 ding. Correct.
Well done. All right. Question 3. Which team won the first ever NBA game? Was it the LA Lakers, the Houston Rockets, the Boston Celtics, or the New York Knicks?
The Knicks.
Yep. Wow.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't believe that you actually were a pro basketball player if you were getting any of these wrong.
Right.
We would stop believing.
I would probably
You'd lose
still
all
believe it.
credibility.
Well, I was only a pro basketball player for a month, so I probably don't count.
Okay.
I mean, that's more than most people can say.
That's true.
so
That's a good point.
I think it counts.
Basketball was invented by kids in Springfield, Mass., a scientist, a doctor, or a gym teacher.
Doctor.
Yep.
Dr. Naismith.
So good.
Have you been to the Hall of Fame?
I have not,
No.
That's your stomping grounds.
I-
right?
unfortunately.
I'm from Long Meadow, which is right next to Springfield.
Oh.
And a lot of people had like sweet 16s and bat mitzvahs at the Hall of Fame.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting fun fact.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a weird fun fact. Yeah, it's like a venue.
I went
sort
to
of,
the Maccabi games there. As a
Oh.
youth.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Cool.
my cousin was playing. Anyway,
Nice.
unrelated.
Last question.
Last question. My favorite question, you could say. What is the name of the 24-year-old Boston College graduate who plays safety on the LA Rams? Is it A, John Johnson, B, Adam Adamson, or C, Rod Rogers?
No idea. Rod Rogers.
It's John Johnson.
John
Oh,
Johnson.
jeez.
You know what, though? We asked Ben, our audio guy, that, and he said Rod Rogers, too. So maybe that's a real person.
I have no clue.
We don't know.
Neither do we.
I don't pay quite as
I
much
made up
attention
those
to the
names.
NFL.
Honestly, I just searched a bunch of first namersons
Yeah.
before I came
First
across
name,
someone.
first name.
Yeah, so I tried to find Adam Adamson. Apparently there's
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Adamson who directed Shrek 1 and Shrek 2, and I really thought I hit gold with that one, but it was true.
It's funny. I was back in the day when I was selling staffing here in Richmond. There was two guys at a client. They were right next to each other, and in their cubicle. One guy was Mitch Mitchell, and the other guy was Rich Richmond. I was like,
Oh,
and
I love that.
dude, Jeff Jefferson, man, we gotta hang out, guys.
Yeah. I would be shocked if you didn't all get along really, really well.
We got along swimmingly.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. So, Jeff, we've loved talking to you about your name, your career in staffing, and your journey as a founder.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll see you at Engage, right?
I'll be there.
Cool.
Awesome. See you then.
All right.
See ya.
See you guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, you can subscribe on Apple or Spotify podcasts. And if you're interested in adding Employdrive to your staffing tech stack, make sure to check them out on the Bullhorn Marketplace at bullhorn.com/marketplace.